Welcome to Fix It for Josh's Sake. Today I'm going to work on a bank of carburetors from a 1981 Yamaha XS650. I wanted to go out and ride around today, but it's raining out, so I'm going to hang out inside, pull these carbs apart, and rebuild them. So come on and watch as I fix it for Josh's sake. Well, these are the carbs I'm going to work on. They're not terrible, but I am going to take my carburetor cleaning brush, scrub around on the outside a little bit, and then I will be pulling them open, starting at the float bowls here. What was happening was it would idle, but it would not throttle up at all. Anytime I'd open the throttle, it would die. So I'm pretty sure we've got some plugged main jets in here. And so, yeah, we're going to dig into this and clean it up. As I'm working on these carbs, I should mention that I'm not sponsored by anyone. Nobody's paying me to tell you guys what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. So I'm just sharing some of the insights I have as I work on stuff like these carbs here. Something that works good for me is some ZEP 505. Again, ZEP is not giving me any money to work on carburetors. Dang, I wish they would. If somebody's listening and they want to sponsor me a case of ZEP 505, I'll use it because it seems to peel the grease off of carburetors and grimy dirt pretty good when it comes to just a nice little surface clean like this. But along with that, I also like a good carb cleaning brush with these long stiff bristles. I don't know where to find these other than I find these at motorcycle and snowmobile swap meets. There are some crappy versions of these with like a plastic handle and the bristles are a little soft that you can get at like different, department stores or whatever, auto parts stores. But these old school wooden ones, man, they are the ticket. And I always like a brass brush, maybe a stainless steel brush, a couple of stiffer plastic bristled brushes, because what we got to do is we got to scrub around in here as I run myself some real hot water. So get this water nice and hot. And then we'll start scrubbing around on this, should we? I feel a lot better about these now. There's not any dust or dirt on the outside of them that's sticking or obviously going to fall into anything important within the carbs. I'm not doing like a deep ultrasonic clean on these. I just want to get the bike running again. But I would say that if you do use any type of a ZEP cleaner, degreaser, make sure you really thoroughly rinse this off, because that can have a tendency to really break down the aluminum if you're not careful. So really, really rinse this off good before you move on to anything else. And now that I got the carbs washed up and they're dried off, I used a rag here to dry them off a little bit. I want to talk about what I got here staged for my project of working on these carburetors. First off, I always keep some sort of a penetrating oil. Anything that will get into some of these screws that are really stubborn. Sometimes these float bowl drain screws get really stuck. It depends. Sometimes you never need them, and sometimes you definitely should be using some deep creep. I got a socket set here with some a ratchet and the 10 and the 8mm. You're going to probably be using your 10 and your 8. Inside here, I cannot remember if it's a 10 or an 8 on the main needle seat, just at the middle of this float bowl. But then I also have this pointy little deal that I use when I am pulling the idle jet out of there. I find that sometimes there's a spring and a washer and a rubber O-ring down in there. Don't forget those are in there. And a lot of times they get kind of stuck, so then I have to have this tool to dig down in there and pull them out. And also have this little bitty screwdriver, which I will not need today because I'm not in the bike. But if you are tuning your carburetors, this rack in the bike, you need a real short little screwdriver like this to get underneath the gas tank. Okay, so I just wanted to bring this out to mention that you will need that if you're doing a quick and dirty tune on the bike in the frame. And I've even had to at times take a tweezers after I have it backed out with this and pull those out, make sure they're clean, make sure everything's moving good, and then put it back together. Again, you screw it down to 0 gently, and then I always start with 2 turns out. That's kind of the spec. All right, and then I've got myself another little screwdriver, because again, we are dealing with some very small little flat screws. And then I have a 6-in-1. Find this to be super useful. Needle nose, we might need it. A wire to get into some of the jets. That might be too big. So then sometimes you can use a needle nose here, and you can pluck a wire out of your wire brush and use that to poke into the jets. Might need a hammer, because we might need to do an impact, type of extraction on any of these screws. Sometimes they get really stuck, and so having something like this can really save your butt. Sometimes you need a big screwdriver to pry. And then I never start cleaning a carb without some Q-tips and some toothpicks, because those are really nice things to clean around in there. So this is sort of my spread as I start to get into this project of cleaning up this carburetor. The last thing I should mention before I start tearing into these carbs is I always have some sort of a set of containers just to drop screws and needle and seats and everything into. So have yourself something to catch your parts. And this is kind of a neat little relish tray thing that I found at a thrift shop, because I can kind of separate my carburetors into little categories with each one of these, because there's so many little sections. Well, that's about the process of taking one side apart, all the little ins and outs. I am not removing this top part. If you want to, it's 4 screws there. The diaphragm in here pulls out, and you can see how this is going in there. For me, it seems like it's moving smoothly, and I'm more concerned, like I said, about the throttling up coming through that jet right there. But I did forget to mention that I like to have some isopropyl alcohol. I'll dump it in a little container like this, and then that's what I do with my Q-tip. And I go in here and I clean all these little crevices and cracks and holes and everything, and just scrub and scrub and scrub and scrub. And, alcohol will even pull out some of this green oxidized gas in there. that's pretty far for me. That's as far as I'm gonna go. I got everything cleaned out with Q-tips and alcohol. Everything is, you know, in a good place. I am gonna do that same process on this bank, and then I will take it out to the air compressor and blow air through every single little hole. I'm talking every single microscopic little crevice. There's even a little hole right there, right there. You can see it. Yep, there it is. You can see that little hole right there. Make sure you get air flowing through every single hole, including your idle screw hole, all those places. And make sure air goes through this hole and that hole. And then, of course, make sure air goes through your drain out in case you do need to empty your float bowls in the fall so that this carburetor doesn't sit here full of gas and get green gunk in it. This one was drained, but it's just puddled a little bit like that, I think. But anyway, that's where I'm going now. I'm going to do exactly what I just showed you on this bank and come back and show you the rest. I want to take a quick second here and point out something I noticed. So we're talking about the idle jets right here, right? And when I took out this last one, I kind of flinched for a second, and then I thought, oh, maybe I'm just confused because I thought there was supposed to be a spring on here. And all I had was a rubber O-ring and a little washer, but no spring. So that means that that can move up and down as the motor vibrates, and it's not going to stay consistent where I place it. And then this one, sure, it's got the spring and it's got the rubber O-ring, but ironically, somebody put the washer up here, and that doesn't do any good up there. That washer needs to be down with the O-ring, so it needs to go spring, washer, O-ring. Now this is how you put it back into that idle port when you're ready to reassemble your carb. So I wanted to take a second to point out this choke hole, that one right there, comes up right here, was really plugged. And so no matter what I was doing, I was not able to get that toothpick to go through there and get air to flow. So then I was taking a wet Q-tip and running it in there. And basically I had to go through a couple of Q-tips in and out to get this choke hole to flow again. And quite a bit of dirt came out of there. So ultimately, whatever side this was, I'm going to say it was my left side of the machine, your shifting side, your clutch side. This choke wasn't breathing, wasn't flowing. So my motor was only getting choke on the right side. So between this choke being plugged and the other side's idle screw not staying in place, I think I've kind of found my enemies. Now, of course, I said it wasn't idling, but when you just don't have proper airflow of everything, it just screws up the whole system of a carburetor. So I feel like I found some good smoking guns here. But I just made another important discovery. This is a sliver of a pop can. A pop can is 10/1000ths of an inch, and so I took a razor and cut that down and put it on a little handle. And so as you can see, that one goes in there real easy. That one's nice. This one does not go in at all. And no matter what I do, in fact, when I open the throttle, and then it's stuck, right? But when you put this one in there, it slides right out. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adjusting this screw a little bit. And so that's just a matter of, let's see here. This is the main one. And this one is, this one's conjoined to that one. So I want to open it a little bit. I guess I'm not exactly sure which way I need to turn it. I will find out, because we'll give it a turn and see what happens here. See if, okay, that got actually tighter. So I went counterclockwise. Now I'm going to go clockwise, and it's a quarter turn the other way. Let's see what happens here. A little looser. Okay. Okay. That would make sense because that screw, another quarter turn, that screw would be pushing the throttle. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Okay. By the way, they call this a bench sync. I know there are people who talk about bench syncing, and they're probably way more proficient in this than me. But at the end of the day, this is a a bench sink, and then you'll go get your air pressure gauges and everything when the motor's running and check it. But I'm pretty happy with this because that slides in there now. I got a 10 thousandths gap, and then that slides in there. I got a 10 thousandths gap there too. So if for some reason I'm like, oh, I don't want any gap, all you have to do is adjust this screw right there, and that will let these come down complete. But now both of these are set at a 10 thousandths gap, and that's a starting point for me. These are now bench synced the same. All right, we're back here at the sink where I got all the parts that came from inside the carburetor, all the little brass and stuff, and I sprayed a little Zep on it, and I will get myself a brass brush here, and I'm just going to gently scrub around on some of this stuff and try to break off some of the grime and the grit. There's like a film, you know, kind of like an oxidization. Now, when you're doing it, be careful not to break that screen because that's important. And when you're doing stuff like this, you know, take a little peek through things and see if you can see the gap through the holes where gas needs to get, you know, as you're working through this stuff. Sometimes you gotta, you know, hold them up to the light and look through them and see if they're clean. If not, you go get that wire brush or a piece of wire and you poke in here until you get things opened up so that they can breathe and flow the fuel like you need to. So I've got these cleaned up pretty good, so I'm going to rinse them off and wipe them off. I'll do that off camera, but I did find another concerning thing here, and that's that this needle, the main jet needle, it sits up inside of the seat, which is right here. And kind of the way the mechanism works is, yes, the float presses against it and seals the fuel, but there's also an element of pressure that this needle has to have, and there's a little spring-loaded pin in there. I'll even take this clip off if I can do it without seeing it fling across the room. But this little needle right there, let's see if you can see it good. That little needle, or that little pin, needs to spring-load in and out. And it's moving a little bit, but I am pretty confident that it is shorter than it's supposed to be and it's gummed up inside. So I'm going to soak this in some penetrating oil for a couple minutes and see if I can't keep playing with it and get that pin, which is spring-loaded behind it, to pop out farther and give me more pressure up into the seat of my main jet. So I soaked it in some Cree oil, kind of an old school, really amazing oil. And I got it to move really nice. It's nice and soft now, and it springs back really well. I compared it to the other one, and ironically, they are that short. My goodness, that seems really stubby compared to some of the other needles that I see in carburetors. But I'm happy that this is at least going to provide pressure and seal the gas in here and keep it from overflowing in the float bowl. So check that. Make sure yours is clean. All right, there's a tub of clean parts all scrubbed up with a brass brush. The only challenge is I'm going to have to be digging through my junk drawer and seeing if I can find a idle screw spring. I am sure I have one laying around. Sometimes it's good to know the cross-reference options. XJ650 is also a Yamaha. It's a 4-cylinder. And I rebuilt a set of those a while back. These are some of the old brass parts that were in there. But I just wanted to point out that the spring that I didn't end up using when I did the overhaul does fit perfectly on this needle, and it sets right in there just like we need it to. So if you find yourself out of parts for an XS650, but you have some spare parts for an XJ, some of the parts do interchange, so keep that in mind. My second carb's all cleaned up now. The parts are all scrubbed, and I did the Zep thing and scrubbed them with a brass brush. But I just wanted to point out how important this particular jet is. It's got one hole there, and then it's got two holes there, and you probably can't see them. They're real small. There's two holes on this side, and then there's a hole down the center. And I'm just pointing this out because I had a heck of a time working these wires into those holes. In fact, I couldn't for quite a while. I had to really scrub and press and clean it out. So just really pay attention to these little microscopic holes, and don't go at it with something ginormous. Use a really delicate piece of wire like this so that you don't like ream out the hole or do something to change the actual jetting of the carburetor. The final step was to scrub these out. I used some 505 and a brush and scrubbed them out really good. And then making sure that this hole is clear, what you can do is you can put a nozzle here, and then when you're blowing air through, if you put your thumb over it, it'll change the tone. So it'll be like, you'll be able to hear the difference if this hole is clear. If this hole is blocked and you put your thumb over this, you're not changing anything because the air is just coming here and coming back out because it's blocked. So if you put your thumb over this when you're blowing air in there and you hear a change in sound, you know this hole is clear. Speaking of float bowls, we'll start by putting this back together. Here's the fuel drain screw. I'll put that in. Make sure it's nice and tight. There's a O-ring that's rubber as well as a chamfer in there, and that will block the hole. So this is sealed now. I'll set that aside, and now we're going to go into a bank here of carbs. We'll work on this one here, and I'm just going to get my parts out. So first things first, let's just see what we got here. I dump out some pieces. Okay, so first things first, we'll put this in. This is the fuel inlet valve. That presses in like that. And then we've got this little jet that drops in. And you got to have a little screwdriver to get that down and in there. Don't go using a big screwdriver. You'll scratch some aluminum in there. Next thing you know, you got shards in your carb. So that goes like that. And then yep, this thing comes on top of it. And then we've got let's see what's next. I think it's this guy. We'll want to go in there like this, and then this one will go in like that. I like to use a big screwdriver for that because this is a big flathead and I don't want to mar it with a little flathead. So that goes in like that. I feel like I'm missing something. Well, first of all, let's put this on here like that. Grab the little screw. Sits like so. And then the Phillips here, we'll put it in. Okay, that's in there good. I wonder if this jet, I'm trying to recall where it comes from. Oh, that's right. Yep, okay. So I was correct in saying this goes there. This jet goes in here, falls down in there, and threads into the face of the carb. Like that. Okay, nice and snug on that. All right, and then we just need to get ourselves set up to put this in. Okay, there's our needle. We put the seat in. We've got the floats like that. There's a little spring here. Okay, now before you put this on, check that. Make sure it's good. Okay, it's good. And then we're going to set this in like this and let it fall down in. Now, if this pin has a burr on it, it won't go in very easy. And so you can use some emery cloth or file or something to knock that burr down. But I just press it in like that and make sure that bounces. Now, if this is a whole nother subject, but if your float isn't adjusted right, it will shut off the fuel too quickly. And so that little tab right there is how you adjust how quick or how slow your fuel is shut off to come into the float bowl. There's a whole, like in manuals, they'll tell you the measurement that you should be at in millimeters from the surface of your carb here to the little flange there and where this should all sit. I'm not going to get into that for this carb, it's already set, but just remember that if you do have to set your floats, you adjust this little tab right there and you measure off of the inside of the carb here and get that set. All right, so that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and put a float bowl on. So we're looking for this hole right here. Goes into this little tang right there. So that sits down like that and comes down in, right? Okay. Well, I noticed that this gasket is a little gnarly. Okay. And so I'm going to go a little above and beyond here. Some of you will appreciate this. The only thing that I know of, it's called All Seal, made for gas and oil resistance. There's like, you know, JB Weld, and there's Loctite, and there's all these other brands out there that make silicone and things. But I promise you, from an unfortunate world of experience, that this is the only one that actually resists gas and oil. The other ones do not do as good of a job. So anyway, because this gasket is a little crusty and I can't get it to clean up as much as I'd like, I'm just going to do a skim. I mean, just a skim. And we'll get our fingers a little dirty in a second. Just a skim. Okay, like that much. I'll put the lid on here. Don't want that to get away on us. And I'm just putting a skim because I don't want to plug any of the holes, like that hole. I don't want to plug that hole. I'm just skimming the gasket a little bit here, and it's going to make it a little sticky. And this particular stuff, it's kind of like a rubber cement. So that goes like that. Okay, everything's nice and tacky. And the thing is, you want to be sure that you've got your float bowl ready to go. All right, because that stuff will stick really good. Now we're watching that hole. Goes in there like this. And it falls down in like that. Okay. And it sits down in there. Oh my, come on. There we go. Get down in there. There it is. Get that pop, right? Okay. And then grab yourself some screws. Start putting it back together. And making it look nice. Okay. Now when you're screwing these in, be real careful to keep your Phillips in there nice. You can get a metric screwdriver that might fit in the slots better. I've had real good luck with just keeping my Phillips screwdrivers pretty clean and crisp. When they start to round out, I go get a new one. But if there is a little dot, see how there's a dot right there? That is not going to be specifically machined to the way we make our Phillips screws in the US. That is going to be machined to a metric standard. So if you have a problem with your technique stripping out screws, go get yourself a screwdriver that will properly match for screws that have a little dot in there. All right, and then the last thing we got to do is we got to put in an idle jut right there. So I'm going to walk you back through this process. We've got our jet, we've got our spring, we've got the washer first, then the rubber. We stack them like that. Oh, sorry. Okay, so you can see the washer, you can see the rubber. Everything's in there good. And then I'm going to set it down in that hole. Just make sure you don't lose any parts. And you got to get your little screwdriver. And we're going to just screw it in until it stops. Just till it bottoms out. But we're not threading hard on that because we don't want to jam anything or change the chamfer. We just want to just, there, right there it stopped. I'm just finger tight stopped right there. So now I'm going to go half turn, whole turn. That's one turn out. Another half turn and a whole turn. That's 2 turns out. And so that's where I'm going to start when I bolt this carb into my motorcycle. All right, so I'm going to go at doing the same process on this one. There we have it. Everything's back together the way it was when we started an hour ago. But there's a few improvements, like this idle screw actually has a spring under it. These butterflies are actually opening and closing at the same rate, even though it was only like, 20 thousandths difference or something like that. That is like a big deal on a motorcycle. And the choke mechanism that was inside of this float bowl was very badly jammed or gunked up in the one, so that's cleaned up. There was also a jet in here that was really gunked up. So everything's put back together. Everything's cleaned really well. I can't emphasize how important it is to take your time, clean all the holes really good, blow air through them, have some fun with it. It's kind of a neat little Lego project, really. And yep, just check everything, make sure everything looks good. You want to fasten these screws nice and tight. Don't strip them out, but make sure you get some good snug leverage on them, and also make sure these are good and snug, since they keep the fuel flowing properly, or actually stop the fuel from flowing properly. So that's about it. That's as far as I can take you today. If you're wondering how to put this rack of carbs into your motorcycle, or how to take them out to even get to this point, go ahead and watch the video that I had posted last week on how to pull these carbs and put them back in the same motorcycle. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, share it with a buddy who's working on an XS650, and subscribe. I love seeing people subscribe because it just lets me know you care and you enjoy what I'm doing and you want to see what I'm doing next. Give me a comment. Tell me what you think. I'm just a rookie, so I'm not a pro. And if you got any tips, insights, or if you have any questions, I have worked on a few of these. I wouldn't mind answering a question or two, or a suggestion of what I should shoot next. Love to do that as well. Well, thanks for watching as I fix it for Josh's sake.